welcome to the last session of the event. I hope you've been enjoying the content and the discussion so far. Make sure to stick around. We have a survey to share and some next steps on the recordings. My name is Helene Bueta. I'm a creative director here at Superside. I can guarantee that every creative at this event is always balancing creative goals versus the business and company goals. It's always such a seesaw, honestly. I cannot wait to get into the discussion with our speakers, so let me introduce them before we jump straight into the discussion. So first off, I want to welcome Tamara Olstring. Tamara is a producer who is passionate about finding efficiencies. She gets excited about building processes and structure for creative teams to help them thrive. Her project expertise includes interactive brand identity, integrated campaigns, photo shoots, and presentations. She is currently the senior design producer at Zapier. And finally, a big welcome to Jessie Edwards. Jessie is a creative director with 15 plus years of experience in the tech industry and has a background in design, photography, and branding. He also has a passion for learning, coaching, and building teams, and he's currently the creative director at Clari. So welcome to all of you. I think I'm going to jump straight into this. I think this is such a big topic that everyone's dying to learn more about. And I'm going to start with the topic of balancing between creative and business goals, which I think is a hot topic in our industry always. Jessie, I'd love to hear your opinion on this. What are the biggest challenges in balancing the needs of a business with the creative aspects of marketing and branding? And also, how do you address those challenges in your day-to-day?
Awesome. So thank you so much for having me here. I am so fired up and so stoked to be able to talk to you, Tamara. Hey, good to see you again. Your question, the biggest challenges in balancing the needs of a business and then the creative aspects of marketing and branding. I think one of the biggest challenges that I have, or I've had in the past as well, is keeping super talented, super creative folks incredibly engaged in the work they're doing when a lot of what comes their way is kind of mundane corporate work. It is vital to the driving pipeline and driving the business needs, but it's not the most glamorous type of work. So one of the things that I like to do is I like to my teams go in and we assess kind of the current workload that we do, and then what can we templatize, like as much as possible. What can we do to templatize work so anything that's repeatable can be run through really quick and knocked out, and then managing my team's time to avoid burnout, to keep them from feeling like they're doing more meaningful work, right? So one of the things we do is we have Canva, which we use to create templates for a lot of that repeatable work, those repeatable assets. And then we have companies like Superside that do a lot of that quick, the fire drill stuff that we have, that's always kind of knocking at the door that we always have to execute on really quickly. So 40% of each person on my team's time is devoted to doing that kind of, I would say, production-y, kind of just get it done kind of work. And then the other 40% of their time is, I want every person on my team spending time doing high-level creative thinking and problem solving, because that's what, as creatives, that's what you should be doing. You should be thinking about the problem and how are you solving it with design. So if you balance that and then make sure that the last 10% is, spent coaching and educating on career growth and their career goals, and then spend the last 10% of their time on, training, company-wide training, like how do we use the software, how are salespeople selling our software, et cetera. So that's how I budget each person's time. And that tends to work really well in keeping them, that there's things you have to do and you got to get it done. And then there's the really creative work that we want them thinking about and solving.
Amazing. Tamara, I don't know if you have anything to add on this topic. I think from my side, it's definitely so true what you say, like you want to play into the things that makes people excited. And really, I think a lot of the, it's so worth investing time into finding things to innovate and to make sure that you can be efficient and to get as you say, the mundane things out of the way as quickly as possible to get to the the juicy creative stuff that's really fueling our creatives at the end of the day.
Yeah, just totally echo everything Jessie said. It's always there, always an issue to try and keep creatives engaged. Yeah, or the challenge rather.
Amazing. Then I think also on the topic of measuring success, Tamara, would love to know from you maybe, how do you measure the success of creative marketing campaigns beyond the traditional ROI metrics in your day-to-day? Is there any additional metrics like engagement and brand awareness and things like that that you'd like to use to measure?
Yeah, I mean, those are absolutely pieces to measure the success of a project that I've used. But for me, as like a creative ops person, like so much of the success on a project for me is a bit more qualitative. And we can A/B test till we die. And it's always great to get your designs in front of customers and user test. But for me, it's more about the question of how did the project flow? It's bigger than did we just hit our deadlines? It's did we really digest the brief and challenge ourselves and come up with ideas we're proud of? Did we communicate well? Did we respect each other's roles on the project? Did we feel comfortable asking each other for help? It's these sorts of questions that I find learnings and success in on a project, and which I often conduct at the end of a project in a retro, or even like quarterly retros at the end of a quarter for a team, just at a high level. And the flow is a big measure of success for me.
Amazing. Yeah, I think that's absolutely spot on. I think I love the concept of just looking back and seeing how we can make things flow, because then at the end of the day, that's like if we fix the flow and if we're in flow and there's a positive flow, that's how we're sort of gonna hit the targets and make the biggest impact at the end of the day. So definitely a very important thing to keep in mind, and something that I think is super important. Then let's transition to touch on empowering your creative team with a strategic mindset, which I think is another sort of important topic, and making sure that we sort of marry those two. So Jessie, a question for you: how do you encourage creative thinking while still keeping a focus on strategic objectives within the company?
I don't know about y'all, but and please forgive me, my Southern accent will come out at some point, so apologies for that. But in my experience in the past dealing with creatives, myself included, we tend to be a little competitive. And so if you are fortunate enough to have a group of creative people, and it doesn't have to be designers, right? When I say creative people, that encompasses everything from front-end developers to writers to VPs of marketing. Marketing people are generally pretty creative people. So when I say creative, I like to create an environment of a healthy competition within a group or within a team. To me, that helps push, I would say, almost younger junior designers to almost compete with more senior level, because you're going to challenge yourself more when you're kind of fighting to win something, right? And sometimes what you're winning is like, maybe it's like, I'll do like Starbucks gift card. I mean, it's really that easy. Or sometimes I'll say, hey, we've got a big project. I want each of you to take this brief. I want you to go work on your own. I want you to come back to me and show me 3 different variants of what you think would meet this brief. And then what happens there is they're fighting to win that high visibility project. Right? Let's say it's something really cool or something fun that they want to do. Like, I want to make a cool animated graphic for an event that comes up. And it's like, okay, here's the logo lockup that you're using. Like, come back with some cool stuff. And whoever has the coolest thing that meets the need, those are the ones that win. And then it's kind of, on them. So I like to have a little bit of healthy competition and have a little fun with projects like that. And I find that it keeps teams engaged. It keeps me engaged with them. It keeps me, pushing them in a healthy way where nobody's, people aren't stressed out trying to figure things out. That also assumes we have the luxury of time to do that sort of experimentation. So there's always a cat.
That's
Right. So there's that. The competition is fun. I always like to set aside a little bit of budget. I'm always like asking, like, finance, like, hey, can I have a few more dollars so that I can provide like resources, any kind of online training events like this, books, magazine, ComArt subscriptions, things like that. Being able to give the team that as like a way to just kind of keep them engaged and reading and looking at new industry trends, things like that. That's kind of a nice gesture and helps. I also like, I got like little bullet points here. So I like to make it, I would say mandatory, but we kind of, I'm a little lenient with this, but every week when we do our weekly, sync at the beginning of the week, we talk about what are we working on this week. At the end of that meeting, I want to set aside at least 10 or 15 minutes for each person on the call to share something really cool that they created themselves or that they found online that's just really interesting. And then being able to share that sort of stuff with the group, it allows us to talk about it and then hopefully disagree with something. Like if I see something like, oh, that's weird, and then they have to defend why they think it's not weird, right? Or maybe everybody loves it and it's great, right? So there's things like that. It just sparks the conversation, talks about things that we like and dislike, and get to learn a little bit more about each other every week. And then the last thing I'll say is I like to for every person on my team, for every 3 or 4 projects that they do that, I use this term very loosely, right? But like boring stuff, right? Like if you have to create a social post for something, or you have to create an email banner, or just kind of like you said, that I use the word mundane type of project. I like to give them something that's a little more fun, that's kind of pushing the boundaries. It may not be a business driver, but if people are in that constant state of execution, that just stifles creativity, in my opinion, right? So keep a close eye on how much each person is doing in regards to like that type of work. Not everything we do is glamorous, but if you approach every request as an opportunity to find a creative solution for it, it makes it a little more exciting, a little more fun. But then if like, okay, I've done these 3 things, they're kind of just cookie cutter, then give them something fun to do. It kind of like, oh, that's great. And then you kind of re-energize and kind of go from there. So long-winded answer. Sorry, I'll kind of go off. So you have to reel me back in. You too.
No, that's absolutely perfect. I think lots of things to unpack there. I feel like we can do a whole session just on all the bullet points you just unpacked there for us. But I think like as you said, like healthy competition is always something that that drives a lot of people. I think especially as you said, the more junior folks on the team, it automatically makes them strive for things, and I think that's also where the innovation happens, because it automatically leads to a bit of risk taking at the end of the day, and drawing inspiration from, say, what their seniors are doing, or just seeing how they can bring a fresh perspective to the team. And I think another thing that you mentioned is about just getting opinions, like hearing different opinions and challenging people. And I think that's definitely, it's so important to lead to someone's growth and to develop their thinking and critical thinking, so they can really question whatever they put on the table, whether that's sort of the best solution, and strategically whether that is going to be the thing that drives the most impact at the end of the day.
Toads.
Cool. And then, Tamara, something I'd love to hear from you. What methods do you use to communicate the strategic priorities to your creative team?
Yeah, I mean, tons of ways, but stand up every week for sure. And something too that I think is important for stand-ups is you so often can get in the habit of just like, here are all the things I'm working on this week. And it's, when your team grows, your stand-up, you don't need a 2-hour stand-up of listing the 72 things you have this week, of just like really narrowing in on like where you're focusing your energy. And like someone once told me this like pebbles model of like, the big rocks and the pebbles and the sand, and like what's going to fall through the cracks, and prioritizing just for your own workload that way. But for me, on, again, more of an ops level, like planning for the team, planning for a project, I mean, there's no one size fits all framework, but a high level one that I usually start with is like a tiering system. And I mean, I once had a boss tell me that literally everything was a priority. And I was like, that's the funniest joke I've heard in my career, because that's not how life works. And so you know, as Jesse's touched on, you have to focus your energy where it matters, and to allow creatives to actually find that space to create and challenge themselves and learn and grow. And so, you know, for instance, like tier 1 is like the big conceptual work, and you know, your timelines and your scope will allow for the creatives to have that space. And then, you know, tier 2 is the mid-level stuff, and tier 3, and again, as Jesse already touched on, is like identifying the places where things can be templatized. Where can we scale? Take this brand, take this charm, and scale it, because there is the mundane stuff, there is the repetitive stuff. It's part of the nature of what we do, but just not focusing your top energy on it. You know, on a project level, I like to do hot sheets every week of like, here are the priorities, here's where to focus your energy this week, and get real granular with it. Because I think sometimes like a big project timeline can be overwhelming for folks. And then, you know, on like a program level or like a quarterly, monthly level, there's road mapping too, and prioritizing that way and focusing more on like your tier 1 stuff. And yeah, I mean, I could have a whole session on just this, so I'll stop there.
Love that. No, it's amazing. You know, like I think a lot of the people on this call is also visual. So I think that pebble sort of analogy that you used resonated with a lot of people. And I think it's, you know, it's definitely something that's going to stick in my mind whenever I'm sort of doing planning. And, you know, like I think hearing you speak about that, I also immediately thought of what Jesse said about making sure that, you know, like we don't let people burn out. And I think prioritizing things and making sure there's a clear focus is such an integral part in keeping the team energized and inspired, and making sure that we never get to that sort of burnout stage of things.
Yeah.
Amazing. So yeah, just sort of leading on from that, something that I'd quickly just like to dive in. I think this panel, you're all Superside customers, which is really pretty awesome. And yeah, would love to hear you talk us through how having Superside on your team enabled more strategic thinking. And Jesse, I don't know if you want to start us with this one, just to sort of see how we and help with the sort of day-to-day on your team.
Yeah, I mean, we could have a whole session just on this if you want, but I think at the end of the day, if I'm going to boil it down to like, I'm going to try to be as concise and focused and narrow in. I'm going to try my best, so bear with me. Superside as a whole, they allow my team to pass over really quick turn requests, like what I was talking about, the fire drills and stuff like that. I've never worked at a job where they didn't exist. Now you can alleviate those things. I think that's where Superside really helps us, because they took the time to learn my company's brand. They took the time to learn who on my team does what. They really allow us to keep up the velocity that my company demands, but also uphold the standard of quality that I expect, that I demand, right? So all the wonderful companies I've worked for in the past, there's never going to be a shortage of these fire drills, but Superside allows for those last minute projects to get done without disrupting business critical work that is kind of currently in the pipeline for me and for my team. That's as short as I could possibly do that. I mean, I could really, if you wrote all that down, I could put it into a sentence, but that's the best I could do. I talk too much, I think.
No, I mean, I think it's all good stuff, Jesse. Keep it coming.
I like travel, so just have to be like, you know.
No, I think that's absolutely amazing. I think we'll maybe we should do a couple of blog articles about each one of these nuggets that we're uncovering along the way. But yeah, like I think you know, like sort of moving to the later part of our session, you know, everyone something loves to talk about, and I think Tamara, you also sort of started touching on that, but is workflows and processes. So maybe you can take this one, Tamara, but how do you ensure that your team stays on track and is also creative, meet the business goals, all without sacrificing the quality of work, because I think there's so many things to stay on top of, and it's such a delicate balance that having good workflows and processes in place is such a key element to ensuring success, and making sure this thing is so well orchestrated, and as you said earlier, everything flows and there's just a sort of natural coming together of different parts to form like a big success at the end of the day.
Yeah. So I think, the make or break point in the project that's so foundational is the creative brief. That's where if you get a brief or if you start a project without a brief, that's always a thing. But if you start with a crazy tight timeline, or you're not clear of the scope, or just faced with so much ambiguity, you're inevitably not set up for success. I mean, that's just, if you don't take anything away in my response, like that's the short of it, because, you need to have that firm grasp to keep the momentum, to challenge yourself creatively. So in the brief, I try to, or if you don't have producers or program managers, whoever's the lead on the project, getting a firm grasp of like what's needed on this project. How do we avoid them asking for stuff later on? Get a firm grasp on that scope and the timing. If it's a rushed project, I mean, that's where you have to set expectations with your requester, your stakeholder, of like, this is what's possible in this amount of time. You can't get a rocket ship in 2 days. And identifying the areas for both where we can push creative boundaries, where we can really have fun and iterate. Like I had a project recently, the lead on it, she called it like blue sky explorations, because we had time to do that. But then also identifying the areas where there's repetitive tasks, or, creating a bunch of different banner sizes or something like that, and identifying how to help the project in that way too. Like Superside helps us with that. And so, that once you get a firm grasp on that and get the lay of the land, if you will, that sends the project in the right trajectory to have a project plan that enables the team to be creative, but like within timing buckets in a project timeline, and just giving your team the space to do that is. So like I say, all starts in the creative brief. If you start too quickly, I firmly believe in the slow down to speed up type of working. So you get, I'm rambling now. Get that foundational stage there.
Ramble, do it.
Project success. Yay!
All good rambles, Tamara. All good rambles. I think that's absolutely amazing. It's great. I think from an ops point of view, just creating that framework and then let the magic happen within that. That's such an important thing. A couple of final sort of questions for you guys before we go into the audience's questions. I believe there's a couple of them too. Jessie, could you maybe walk us through how you incorporate feedback from stakeholders and adjust your creative strategy accordingly? Again, I think this one's all about balance, but there's obviously many opinions to take into account, and just sort of making sure that those are presented to the team in a way that brings everyone along and brings everyone together.
Oh, speaking of a whole session off of one thing, feedback is necessary, and sometimes feedback's really good. Sometimes feedback is not so good. But one of the things I always try to tell my team is to always try to put themselves in the shoes of the requester. And if the questions and the feedback that they're getting still don't make sense, confusing, lacking information, they have to reach out and ask. And then if they're still struggling, then they can escalate to me, and then I'll work through to help them. But I don't want to solve the problem for them. And I think a big part of as a creative, a big part of our role is not to just execute, right? Like the creative team, everybody on my team, they have to be problem solvers. And if they work directly with the requester and they show empathy and a willingness to help them find a solution rather than just, pardon my expression, screw it, we just got to get done, here you go, and passing something off, the requester is going to see that and acknowledge that and view them as a partner. And so that's where you have to get as a creative person. And that's the biggest advice I can give to a young person kind of going into the creative field. Your job is not to just execute or make cool shit. Your job is to help someone solve a problem and help them do that visually in most cases, right? But that's not always, it's writing, it's building, it's all kinds of things, right? It's a whole, it's a village. And this is when design and design teams and creative people can become an ally, and they're not just this next step in the process. They're not just the end of the process, right? So, my mission statement, my team's mission statement is, and quote, to help accelerate growth and develop a world-class brand by partnering with stakeholders to plan, develop, and design strategic initiatives. That does not, nowhere in there does it say we take something and then export it, right? Like we execute it. We just, turn the wheel, right? Like our job as creative people is to help someone solve a problem and partner with them. That's going to help the business succeed and the business to grow and the business to make money. So long-winded answer yet again, but that's kind of how I see kind of getting feedback from folks is just empathy. Like put yourself in their position. Nobody is coming to you or the design team because they want you to screw up or they just want you to do a thing. They're trying to get their job done. And they're usually trying to do it with very little funds and on a really tight time frame, right? And so if you can kind of see it from that and not get frustrated with, God, why do they keep coming to me last minute with this? Maybe it just takes you going to them and asking them like, hey, I noticed this is the second time this week you've come to us with this thing. Is there a way I can help to space that out? Is there a way, what's driving this immediate need or immediate decision? When you have those conversations, it opens the door to having a partnership with all of these people that you're working with day to day. And it alleviates a lot of frustration and tension. And it's just communicating, just talking. So that's my thoughts on that. But I would love to hear from you if y'all have other strategies around how you kind of take that and then push that back.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I think empathy can solve so many problems. Just actively listening. I think listening and listening to understand and as you said, putting yourself in someone else's shoes. I think not just between stakeholders. I think it can solve so many other problems. It's just always making sure that there's that focus on empathy and just making sure you truly understand what the other person's saying and what it is that they're trying to get to. So I think you hit the nail absolutely on the head with that one. Cool. So I think we actually almost out of time, but let's maybe try and ask one or two audience questions. I just quickly want to check here. Cheryl Draper asked, if you have a brilliant designer who is very siloed and quiet, should you encourage them to talk and make them uncomfortable or let them get on with their tasks and keep them happy? I think this is a really brilliant one. So I don't know which one of you want to take that because, very, very relevant question.
Yeah, I can take a stab. I know for me, like I'm somebody that has, a good deal of energy on calls and on brainstorms. And I'm always like, all right, y'all, like, let's do it. Let's get pumped. And I think, that freaks some people out, especially in the time that I lived in Europe. They're like, really, you're this pumped about a brainstorm? Anyway. That was my approach to kind of every project, every person on the team of like, hey, and I came to realize that like, that's not, I can be energetic, but like, I can't make other people be. And like, it's not my place. And like, you're going to have some designers who are shy, your creatives who are shy. And that's, where other tools come into play and work really beautifully for folks who have different working styles. Like you have Maryland Fig Jam to collaborate remotely and add stickies. Maybe they're too timid to speak up in the meeting, and you encourage folks to add notes async. You have Loom. Maybe they get stage fright, but they feel comfortable recording it and send it to you later. You know, like there's so many different ways to let your creative be themselves without pressuring them. You know, I think there's a balance of like pushing them, challenging them of like, hey, I think you can do this. Not to have like a fixed mindset, open mindset, you can grow, you can do this, but also respecting their social emotional boundaries. Yeah.
Word.
Mm-hmm.
Totally agree. And I've had the luxury of having inherited people to my team, hiring people, building teams, small teams, large teams, and you always will run into, everybody's different, right? Everybody's got a different personality. And one of the things that I had a VP a while back tell me is he was like, a lot of times the disconnect comes when the expectations from one person is different than their managers and vice versa. And he said, if you want to have a really fun, you know, here's a fun game, go create a document, just create a Word document and outline what you expect out of each person on your team and what their role is. Like, what do you expect them to do? What do you not? And then have them do the same thing. And then when you get it back, compare the two and look. And he said, you would be blown away how often the expectations of an employee are vastly different than what I expect from them. So I've adopted that going forward. No matter where I go, we create a document that we call an expectations document. And I write it first and then they write it. And then we meet and have a one-on-one for an hour, 2, 3, however long it takes for us to be 100% salient clear on like what I expect that person to do and what they expect. So when you run into someone who is much, you know, more introverted or shy, if you understand that and you're very clear that they don't want to be pitching to senior executive leadership, they are really happy putting their earphones on and just making cool shit, then if you know that you're going to inevitably set them up to be successful doing that thing, and they can go so far in their career just doing work that way. But you know, you might have somebody that wants to, you know, play that game. I want to be a CMO one day, which that's terrifying to me, but they might want to do that, right? But if I know that that's what they want to do, I can go ahead and say, okay, as your day-to-day role, here's what you do. And then here are the things that I'm going to allow you to do throughout the process of this that we've established in that expectations doc that say, I expect you to do this and perform this, but as part of your career growth and your path to being chief, you know, CMO, these are the things I need you to do and to chip away at. And sometimes if they're a little introverted, I tend to be very introverted. Like I'm going to be so exhausted after this that I'm gonna have to like block off time to take a nap or something. Maybe
I'm with you on that
one. for sure. Maybe I should drink coffee, but I'm already kind of jittery, wired. But so that has helped me tremendously in the past, is like understanding like what they want out of their careers and their goals, and then being able to lean into that. And if they want to be more public facing, all that kind of stuff, but they tend to be more introverted, there's ways you can coach and teach and put them in a safe environment to fail gracefully and learn, so that you don't just throw them to the wolves and they just kind of implode and then they're terrified to do it going forward, right? So you have to kind of build that environment for them. End scene.
Period. Amazing. No, like I think, that's such lovely input. I mean, I'm naturally a bit more introverted, and I think, you know, it also taught me a great deal about adapting my leadership style. Like it's not a one size fits all, and you know, really taking time and just identifying what people's strengths are and like what are the things that will set them up for success at the end of the day. So I'm definitely with you. Maybe not CMO, but there's some things that you can do to just make sure everyone shines in their unique way. Like I think there's a lot of that you can do to enable people as part of management. We're almost out of time, so let's quickly try and sneak last one in here. Melanie Upchurch asked, any recommendations on how to handle the preamble of "I'm not a designer, but" before receiving feedback that consists of terrible ideas and comments that destroy a perfectly good visual solution.
Yeah, I mean, I think the short answer is sometimes can come down to as simple as like objective versus subjective, like, I'm sorry you don't like purple, but like that's part of the vision, part of the design,
color, our primary brand color.
Right. Color. It's like, look, toenails, you don't like purple. We're not changing that, that's just personal preference. But if it's objective and you can, I think so much sometimes, especially for me as someone who runs a project, is like educating stakeholders of like how to give feedback. Because sometimes they just don't know. And that's, as Jesse's saying, like we want to be partners and like in on this together. And so educating them and saying like, hey, this is not, the messaging we're after here. We're actually after this type of messaging according to our brief or whatever, and that helps us understand, okay, maybe we missed the mark on that. That's valid feedback. Or I guess prefacing, I'm not a designer. Yeah. If it's a design piece, like on a small thing like an icon, it is amazing how much people have to say about the icons in an ebook. Anyway, yeah, it's I think about objective or subjective, and then educating those stakeholders when the subjective maybe isn't appropriate. Yeah, I'm
gonna have to get Tamara to teach me more about the tiering system, because I bet she kicks so much more ass in that department than I do. So we're gonna chat next week or two, and I'm gonna learn from you about that. A lot of times we find, to your point, like they don't really know what they're doing wrong, and you have to educate them on how to do it. As 100% the case. If you start by framing the need like, hey, I made this thing, I'm gonna put it out there. If it's customer facing, that immediately kind of falls into the category of, okay, well, you can't just make whatever you want, right? There's kind of rules that have to be followed. So that kind of helps to have that conversation first, like, cool, this is the process when it starts and needs to go through this team versus that. But we get all kinds of cool stuff. Like every department, everybody wants their own logo. And then they want to do this stuff where they manipulate things, and it's creative and cool. There's a time and a place for all of that stuff. I've worked at places where there was such a rigid design system that it was like, you cannot touch this or change this. And it's kind of, that in itself is kind of stifling. I had a previous leader tell me one time, he was like, it's kind of like, your corporate logo is like, or your brand, your company brand is, you should think of it as, it's like your little brother, right? You can beat up your little brother, but nobody else can. And so you have to think about it as like, okay, if somebody wants to do this weird thing internally, like, is it a good use of my time to fight them on that for an internal thing that they're doing for whatever reason? No, it's not. It's not a good use of anybody's time. As long as you make it clear, hey, so-and-so, this is really cool how you made this weird looking thing with our logo and just kind of bastardized it beyond recognition. That's great. Keep it in here, right? Like, keep it over here. I better not see it on LinkedIn coming from
they put it on a billboard.
Do not put it, but it also allows people to kind of have fun with stuff, and it kind of continues to perpetuate culture. As anybody here knows that works in tech, they love their t-shirts and they love, making brand, internal program branding and stuff. Let them do it. It's fine. Just as long as you do what you can to keep it under control, right? Like the rule is, if this comes from Clari, it goes through this department and this is the end, right? If you want to do this internal stuff, go for it, man. Have a good time. Enjoy yourself. If there's some like really inappropriate stuff, then you might have to pump the brakes, but that rarely happens, right? So, let people push the boundaries. A lot of times I think it's really helpful too when somebody says, I'm not a designer, but I tried to design this presentation, this slide, this chart in PowerPoint. That actually helps me tremendously, because it helps me to understand, like, what are they trying to think through? Like, what are they trying to solve? Like, what are they trying to? And so if they were to just give me some data and then I have to go in and design it, I might kind of be way off from what they're thinking. So it does kind of help when people take stab at stuff to give you a ballpark of what they're working through. So sometimes it can be actually helpful. But anyways, again, ranting. We talk about this all day.
No, absolutely, absolutely love it. I think, yeah, thank you both so much, JC and Tamara, just for joining us today, for sharing your experiences. Yeah, like we can do a workshop and a session literally on each one of these questions. I think it was so much fun, and there's so much like I'd love to continue unpacking here. But yeah, we really appreciate your time and your insights and joining us here today. It was such a pleasure chatting to you both.
Hey, I hope that session sparked some ideas and provided some excellent insight. If it did, join the Superside community. We've got plenty more videos and events to enjoy. Otherwise, visit superside.com to book a quick demo and find out more about what we do. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you later.